Hello, and welcome back to another Tracker live stream with talking. This is the third live stream with talking. And today I am going to try driving this Kerbal train, this monorail train, which is moving along a bit quite fast, despite the brakes being on. And basically, if it derails at any point, I have to end the stream. If I don't derail, I will intentionally derail at the end of the line. So I'm going to be going as far as I can. So make sure the engine is running, because at the start of the stream I was having problems with the engine. The engine is definitely still running. So we'll go in the cab. We've got a few different views. We can have this cab view, and we've also got passenger view as well, looking out of the windows. So let's go back to the cab view. I like to get out of the seat like this and then go back in, as there's something in the free IVA mod that makes the interior fixed to the craft and makes it less wobbly. So I guess we'll start moving. So just going full throttle now, releasing the brakes, and we're going. I've got this map in the bottom corner to show the location of the train, and currently the speed limit is 40 meters per second. So I will throttle down now. The throttle is connected to the blade pitch, so it almost acts like a gear in a way. Imagine if I derail now and have to end the stream. So we're now going on the bridge over the Race River. Speed limit goes up now to 200, or 400 actually, but this train can't do 400. I went with this train because it's generally more reliable than the higher speed one. I've not actually tested this track for this sort of speed, so this new track for this sort of speed, so hopefully it doesn't derail. Might have to make an allowance to reload just for that if it does, just because I didn't test it. But after this bridge... Oh, that's a derail Kraken! We survived! Oh, we survived the derail Kraken. Given how early the derail Kraken happened, that does not give me good hopes. Given the derail Kraken happened that soon in. Luckily, we survived and we're still on the rails. So we're nearly at the top speed of this train. Let me look outside. If the derail kraken happens at full speed, there's a much higher chance of it destroying the train. For some reason I'm not seeming to be able to get any faster when this is like the upgraded version of the train that can go a little bit faster. Might have to have a look at the engine again. The engine is performing well. Why are we not at a normal speed? Is the emergency brake on? No. Yeah, this is really struggling. Let's have a look at the drag. Not sure how I feel about having to go 180 meters per second instead of 200. Because this train, the Mark IV train, is designed to go a bit faster than the Mark III. The Mark III was supposed to have a top speed of 200 and the Mark IV was supposed to have a top speed of 220. So I'm not sure why it appears to be struggling. We are going marginally uphill, but that shouldn't affect it that much. We seem to be accelerating better now. Weird. So the track along here has pretty much got nothing going along for the first 5 or 10 minutes until it gets to a tunnel which is a bit further down. Yes, I have seen the new Kerbal Constructs train mod. Some of the bridges some of the bridge that I made going over the river uses the statics from that mod. So here we go. You can see a baobab tree down there that we just passed, and some mountain ranges over there. As there's not really much to see right now, let's go into passenger view. So this is what the passenger can see out of the left side of the train. Let's move over. The Kerbal is screaming. Let's move over to the right hand side of the train to see the mountains. If I crouch and jump, I can get into the window. So you can see the mountains. This is clearly not a middle carriage because the middle carriage is usually a bit smoother. Where are those Kerbals? Let's transfer one to the middle carriage, as that one for some reason is smoother than the other carriages. There we go. So you can see the mountain ranges over there. Should have gone with the fast train, shouldn't I? The jet-powered one. That one is very loud though, probably wouldn't be able to hear my voice over that one. Haven't checked, is my voice working? Haven't asked that yet. Should have probably asked. Right, let's go back to the cab view. The train is really struggling on this hill. This train does struggle a bit on hills, but I always thought this train was faster. Might have done a change to it and I forgot about the change I did. Or maybe the engines are opposing each other. Let me look at the engines again. The engines I think are good. It's hard to tell. I think they are good, the engines. We're going flat though. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's struggling. Anyway, you can see there's a big mountain in front of the train now. And there is a tunnel going through this mountain. So we are rapidly approaching the first tunnel on this trip. This tunnel, as of right now, doesn't have a name. Some of my tunnels have names. Some of the names are a bit weird because I let the Kerbal waypoints name the tunnel by placing a waypoint on the tunnel, and that's how I named some of them. However, this tunnel doesn't have a name. Can just about see the tunnel in the distance. I'm not sure what the mountain is called. Only a few of the mountains have names on Kerbal. Like the one west of Kerbal Space Center is sometimes called K2. And there's one near the North Pole called Mount Everest because it's the tallest. Anyway, we are rapidly approaching this tunnel now. Here we go into the first tunnel. The derail kraken is a lot more destructive in the tunnel if it happens. So I was about to say let's hope it doesn't happen in the tunnel, but the effects would be pretty similar whether it's inside the tunnel or outside. Just inside the tunnel you get explosions. Outside the tunnel the train flies off the track. My speed is starting to pick up a bit again now the train is going downhill. If you turn down the game, Yes, I could use the jet train if I turned the game volume down. I have a lot of tunnels. Speaking of tunnels, here comes the next tunnel, the second tunnel of the route. In fact, with the direction we're going, I was about to say we would go through all but one tunnel, but now I think about it, there's 3 tunnels that we won't go through on this trip. And one of them's on the ZPA bypass line, which is a line that we can't access. The speed record for my train, the jet train at least, is 670 meters per second, where it then derailed immediately because it was too bouncy. This train is a lot slower though, because I chose a slower train just because it's a bit safer and a bit more reliable. As the jet train, although it can go fast, has some very low mounted fairings on it, so if it hits a big bump or a derail kraken happens, it can quite easily break those fairings. When the fairings on these trains are higher up, so you're less likely to hit them. Coming up on the right should be a lake, so we'll go to passenger view. There should be a lake coming soon. There's a tree, a lone tree. Can just about see the edge of the lake now. The lake should be soon, should be just after this hill we're passing. There we go. There's the lake. And that's the lake, and soon after the lake should be a tunnel. Train rocked quite hard just then. Here's the tunnel. coming up on a junction, and there is a junction ahead which is not this one, which is currently set against us, and if I were to go into it we would derail. And my intent is to try and go as far as possible without derailing. So I will have to try and remind myself that the junction that is set against us is just after a sharp curve that requires us to slow down. The junction that we just went over goes nowhere currently. I intended it to go down to that peninsula that is sort of south of us and east of Kerbal Space Center. As you can see, this is quite a long straight line. I tried to make these lines as straight as possible to allow the trains to go as fast as possible. Just check outside to make sure I'm not approaching that curve too fast. Yeah, there's a big bridge actually before the curve. So we can go as fast as this train can go along this bit of the line. But when we get to the curve, we have to slow down to 40 meters per second. You can see we are now slowing down because of the fact that we are going uphill. Now, if you were looking at the engine earlier, you may have noticed that it's a bit of a cheaty engine. It uses the glitch where you rotate, it uses the glitch where a turboshaft engine can generate infinite electricity. Trying to manage the speed a bit with the throttle lever. We are now on the very high bridge. This is one of the highest bridges on the monorail network. I don't think it's the highest bridge, but it's definitely one of the highest bridges. You can see the Kerbals are, except for Valentina, the Kerbals are currently panicking. Probably terrified the derail Kraken is going to happen. See, now we're going downhill and we're accelerating again. The bridge... No, the bridge doesn't have a name. I decided not to name any of the bridges because the entire railway is on a bridge of some height. Right, we should be approaching the curve soon. Have to know when to slow down. If I zoom in, can't see a speed limit sign yet. I have Isafen Kerman, Milski Kerman, Valentina Kerman, Bill Kerman, Bob Kerman, and Ribfert Kerman. Which Ribfert's face wasn't showing, so I'll just show him. As you can see, he's screaming just like Bob. Right, we are approaching this curve now, so I'm going to start slowing down. Might have slowed down a bit too early there. Which, it's better to slow down too early than too late. Because slowing down too late will result in a derailment. Here comes the speed limit warning to tell us that there is a lower speed limit coming up. Yellow means 40 meters per second. Gradually slowing down for the curve. When we pass the curve, I won't accelerate straight away because I need to set a junction that's ahead of me so that I won't derail on the junction. Definitely slowed down way too early. Slowing down the rest of the way now for the 40 speed limit coming up. Here comes the curve. after the curve, the speed limit goes back up. And while I'm doing that, I will Control K, as I need to set this junction ahead of me, which is currently not set for me. There we go. The junction is now set, and we now have a path through the Kerbal Space Center. I'd like to know what I did on my video of this train, where I managed to bring it up to 220 meters per second for some parts of it. I know 220 was downhill though, but I was going up to 215 in some cases when it wasn't going downhill. There we go, 150 meters per second. Almost back up to full speed again. I'll try not to derail, but there's always the derail kraken that could end the stream. Which the derail kraken is where the wheels clip through the track and then things start exploding. Along this route we have sort of hills on this side, and we can actually see a railway over there. Oh yes, we're approaching the junction. I thought we already passed the junction, but that was me setting the junction so we can go over it. So yes, now we're going to go over a junction where a main line that I am proposing may get built. It will be known as the Monolith Express route, where I will try and send a track to every monolith on Kerbin. I don't know if that's possible, because that's more driving than I'm going to be doing in this live stream if I make it to the end. If we look over there, you can see hills. But there should also be, there, that's the railway added by the new train mod that has been added to Kerbal. That bridge over there, which has now been obstructed by a hill. Let's go back to Valentina Kerman. We are now approaching a tunnel. This tunnel doesn't have a name, but this is the tunnel I built in my video where I built a tunnel that got just over 1,000 views. And over here is another tunnel. This tunnel actually had to be rebuilt once because this tunnel had to be rebuilt once because when I upgraded the trains to go faster, I found out that some of the bumps in the track were too much for the supersonic train. So I decided to rebuild the tunnel to allow trains to go supersonic through the tunnel. Up here we are approaching a crossover where a line added by another mod crosses over with my line. I had to modify the other line slightly because a bridge leg happened to be on top of my line. We are now going uphill towards the longest tunnel on the monorail. This uphill stretch lasts for a very long time, where the uphill stretch lasts quite a while, meaning the train will slow down quite a bit. Wow, we've got 9 people watching. That's the most people, the most concurrent viewers I've seen. So yes. We're now going uphill, so the train will slow down. So the mod that gives me the monorail line. So the monorail is actually made out of bridges that is added by a mod and then I put them together. The bridges are the 4,500 meter bridges added by, I think they're 4,500 meter added by Ordinary Construction Co. However, I scale them down to 25% so that they're the same width as the Mark III cabin. You also need Kerbal Construct. The next tunnel is visible ahead. This tunnel is the tunnel before my longest tunnel. This tunnel I think is about 7 kilometers long. The tunnel after that is the longest tunnel on the entire monorail at 27 kilometers long. So the tunnels are made by me doing some trickery with map decals. If you place a Kerbal Construct's map decal in just the right place, you will open up a hole through the terrain, and then I go through that hole with the track. You can see the frame rate has tanked now because it's loaded in that tunnel, which has, I think it's got something like 1,000 statics, 1,000 Kerbal Constructs statics. something like 1,200 hangars. Which is definitely causing a bit of lag. You can just see the entrance to the tunnel where I filled in the rest of the hole around the tunnel. The frame rate should come back after I've passed through the long tunnel. But it might tank a couple more times if we get to the next areas with lots of statics. So we are rapidly approaching the tunnel now. This tunnel is 7 kilometers long. The tunnel after it is the long one. There we go. Into this tunnel, which also doesn't have a name. That seems to be something in common with all of the tunnels on this main line. None of them have names. When we get off of this main line, they should start having names. If we get off of the main line, I have to add that if we get off the main line, there's always the chance that the derail kraken strikes, causing major explosions. And when the derail kraken strikes, derailing the train, that is when the stream will end. So we have to hope that the derail kraken doesn't happen. So we are about to leave the 7 tunnel. We are about to leave the 7 kilometer long tunnel now. And then we go on a bridge between some mountains, and then we end up in the long tunnel. You can see the next tunnel rapidly approaching. That tunnel is the long tunnel. That one is 27 kilometers long and is the longest tunnel on the monorail. Here we go. We are now in the longest tunnel on the monorail. We stay in this tunnel for about 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes. This tunnel took 5 hours to build. And has just over 1,200 hangars to make the tube of the tunnel. This tunnel would have actually ended up being 2 tunnels with a split in the middle, but I had trouble opening up the first tunnel at the other end, so I decided to just go straight through and place a map decal to bury it. There is a big bump in the track in this tunnel somewhere. I haven't ever derailed on it, but it definitely looks sketchy when you go over it. There it is, I think. Or it might be a bit further down. That might be it. I don't know, but I know around here there is a big bump in the track somewhere. There's a few big bumps in the track. And it's just because the track is underground. I was having more trouble aligning the track segments. The speed limit through this tunnel is 200 meters per second. It's a bit lower than the highest speed you can go because of the curves in the tunnel and also because of those bumps I was talking about. The track is now starting to go downhill as we go towards the end of the tunnel. See, we're picking up speed. That was the sketchy bump I was on about. But the train hasn't derailed yet. There's the light at the end of the tunnel. And we have just made it through the longest tunnel on the monorail. You can see we're picking up quite a bit of speed now. We're going downhill. Let's see if the frame rate has come back. I think the frame rate has recovered a bit, but it's not quite come back. It won't come back fully until we unload that tunnel again, because that tunnel really tanks your frame rate. Along with Biker Banor tunnel, that one also tanks the frame rate. We are about 15 to 20 minutes away from the about 20 minutes away from the Kerbal Space Center. I say 15 minutes, but that's more in-game time. In real life time, it's probably more like 20 minutes. This track is quite straight and not much going on for this portion. But as we get closer to the Kerbal Space Center, more should start coming past. Over in the distance we can see a bridge of the other railway going over the top of the monorail. And there is another tunnel coming up. We are rapidly approaching the next tunnel now. There's the other railway. You can see that railway goes over the hill when my monorail goes through the hill. We're just going through the tunnel. Once again, a tunnel with no name. And just after that tunnel is another tunnel with no name, which is just in the distance over there. This tunnel we are approaching is the first tunnel I ever built that goes actually through the terrain. As you may have noticed, the derail kraken did just happen, but luckily we stayed on the rails with no damage. This is the first tunnel I ever built that actually goes through the terrain rather than making the terrain lower and sort of filling it in with statics. I keep thinking to go and stop and quick save for if the derail kraken happens again and destroys the train, but I'm forgetting that the stream is titled that it ends when I derail, so we're now going over a bay to the ocean. Coming up on the next high-speed straight, and we are now approaching the first station that we will go fast through. Maybe the station is a bit further down the line than I thought. Yeah, the station is a bit further down than I thought. It's surprising how bad my route knowledge is of my own railway. There's a station on top of a hill that the railway sort of goes on top of. It's probably the next, either the next hill or the one just after. The station that we are approaching is the station at Cove Launch Site. I say at Cove Launch Site, but it's not really at, it's like 5 kilometers away. So yeah, the station is in that railway cutting ahead of us. Where the railway sort of goes through that dip in the hill. We will be going fast through this station. So anyone standing on that platform better stand back. That was Cove Launch Site Station, which is about 5 kilometers away from the Cove Launch Site. Was that Cove Launch Site Station? Doubting myself. It's definitely Cove Launch Site Station, as the Cove Launch Site is that way. We then go up and over a hill, and we approach the next station, which is called Small Aerodrome. I think there might be a station in between. Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's another station. The station has a very weird name. Station is just over here, just over the top of this hill. We did pass the speed limit warning sign to tell us to slow down, but that is for trains going supersonic, when I am not going supersonic, so I can go faster, I can go fast for longer. So here comes the next station, which has a very weird name. The name is Plainhead Centre Station, which is a completely random name I made up. There it is, it's just a platform. We will now start to slow down as we are approaching the next junction and curve. The next station is Small Aerodrome Station, which is very close to that other station we just passed. And the junction we're joining up with is that other monorail line over there. I definitely slowed down a bit early, didn't I? Seems to be a common thing, it's me slowing down too early. As I said, it's better that I slow down early rather than too late. I have derailed before by slowing down too late. Here comes the next station. That is Small Aerodrome Station we just passed. Let's check the junction. I'm pretty sure it's set correctly, which it is. I definitely slowed down way too early for this curve. As for optimal running, where you run the train at its fastest, you reach 40, maybe one track segment before the curve, which is about 1 kilometre, maybe a bit after that. But I could have reached I could have probably stopped. There's a derail kraken. We have been so lucky today with the derail kraken happening 3 times already with nothing happening. We might not be so fortunate the next time it happens. The derail kraken definitely seems very active today. Some days the derail kraken just doesn't happen at all, and today it's happened like 3 times. But luckily it hasn't caused us a derailment. We are still on the tracks, and we are still running. Here comes the 40 speed limit. As in, I know at some point in the stream, if it doesn't derail, I might end up hoping that the derail kraken happens just so I can end it, but we've not reached that point yet. Frame rate is still a little low. Here we are going over the next junction, which joins up the ZPA bypass line to us. We now speed up to 100 just after this curve here. Now we speed up to 100. I will have a look at the slow physics speed though, because personally I prefer high physics speed with low frame rate. Not sure what the viewers will prefer though. But I'm just noticing that my physics rate isn't at 100%. I won't speed it up because I know a low frame rate isn't that good for watching. We are speeding a little bit. Doesn't really matter as the speed limit was higher on this line. The only reason I lowered it is because of the fact that I was having problems where the trains were unable to slow down in time. So that's the speed limit warning signs for the next junction coming up, which is the Crate Yard Junction. That is one of the lowest speed limits you can get, which is a 20. The absolute lowest speed limit on the monorail is 10 meters per second, which you have to go 10 meters per second if you're going left at the junction. I'm going right where you can go 20. We are now approaching the Kerbal Space Center. And we will be going through the KSC tunnel, which goes under the Kerbal Space Center. Some trains definitely have better braking force than others. Because I've been going at this really slow speed for ages. Here we are approaching Crate Yard Junction, or Crate Factory Junction, depending on what you want to call it. This has a speed limit of 20 meters per second. And you can see it's sort of a flying junction where one track goes over the other. The reason for this is due to a slight misjudgment of the curve. So when I was building the track, I ended up going into the other track, and I didn't want to have the speed limit go down to 10 on a main line. I wanted it to go down to 20 at minimum. Speed limit now goes back up to 40. There's the Kerbal Space Center. Here we are approaching the Kerbal Space Center. We will now go into a tunnel under the Kerbal Space Center. Here we go into the Kerbal Space Center tunnel. And soon we will be passing KSP station, which is inside the tunnel. There's KSP station. And here we are leaving the KSP tunnel. Better check for junctions. That one's good, that one's good. speed limit all the way through the Kerbal Space Center is 40. And soon we will be going on to the oldest track of the monorail. There we go. Here comes the last junction at the Kerbal Space Center. Where the speed limit goes up to 60. Green means 60. And here comes another speed limit sign saying the speed goes up to 100, which is dark blue. We are now running on the oldest track of the monorail. This track is exactly 1 year old today, built 1 year ago. And because it's the oldest track, I didn't design it with fast trains in mind, so this portion of the track is relatively slow in comparison to the rest of the tracks. And it's just because the train I had at the time I built it had a top speed of 80 meters per second. So I wasn't that worried about having speed limits going down to 40. But then I made a train that could go 100, and then I made a train that could go 150, and then I made a train that could go 170, and then I made a train that could go 180, and then I made a train that could go 200. And after all of that, the 40 limit seems super low, and makes this part of the route seem very tedious to me. We cross back over with one of the lines added by another mod, by the new train mod. And this blue sign, this light blue sign, indicates that the speed limit goes down to 80. The reason it goes down to 80 from 100 is just because I had a couple of derailments along here going 100. So this is my first ever line on the monorail. And coming up here you can actually see a prototype speed limit sign which is different to the rest of them because I didn't know what I was going to use to tell you when to slow down. So I used this speed bump sign to tell you when to slow down. I placed a normal modern speed limit sign next to it though. You don't need to slow down right at that sign, but it does tell you when you need to slow down. And after that, will be one of the slower parts of the monorail, being about as fast as most real trains, which being so up high on a bridge makes it seem extremely slow. There we go, we are now at 40 meters per second. And you can definitely tell this track doesn't have great quality with the way it goes up and then it goes back down again. Because of its not great quality, that's why the speed limit is so low along here. Also ignore the fact that the track is floating. I couldn't be bothered to add bridges below it to join it to the ground. I think I was imagining the ghost road added by KSP++, which is also floating. And over on the opposite side of this bay here is a station, a very creatively named station called Village Station. Let's have a look at the passenger view. This is out the right hand side, or the starboard side of the train. Let's look out the left hand side, just ocean. Almost seems like it's flying, except it's like the angle of attack is 0. Look back out the other side again. You can see the bay that we're going over. If I zoom in, you can see the other railway, and you can see the mountains west of the Kerbal Space Centre. And that spiky mountain there is the one that players call K2. Not sure if everyone calls it K2, but most of the people, including Scott Manley, call it K2 that I've heard giving it a name. Just coming off of the bay. Should be passing the station soon, named Village Station. Oh, we've slowed down a bit. We have to go at least the speed limit so that we're not wasting time here. Yes, it's called a monorail. It might look like it has two rails either side, and that was my intention when I originally built it, was to use those two as sort of rails, but I found out there was a problem with reliability and it kept coming off the track. So instead I use these guide wheels that keep it on the track. We are now passing village station, or about to pass a village station. And over here we are approaching the first ever tunnel that was built. So the last tunnel we went through that was the first tunnel that actually goes under the terrain. This tunnel is the first ever tunnel on the monorail. I always wish I could go a bit faster on this line, but whenever I try going faster it gets very sketchy. I often think to myself I should probably rebuild this line one day and try and get a higher speed limit out of it, because I find this part of the monorail quite boring to go along. I'm not sure if it's because it's the original line, but I think it's just a speed because it's so much slower than the rest of the monorail. So there's the first ever tunnel, and you can sort of see how I built this one. I sort of used a map decal to cut through a hill, and then I filled the hill in with the terrain integrators from the original Curb Inside mod. I think it was called Curb Inside Campus. Sometimes the derail cracking happens around here, so let's hope it doesn't. This is the first ever tunnel on the monorail. This one I think has a name, but I don't remember what it's called. And then we go over a bit of ocean before we reach Beach Airfield, where there's a station. And there's a brief bit where I can go up to 100 meters per second. A brief bit where I can enjoy the higher speed track. But it won't be for long because I'll have to then slow back down to 40. Might not talk much on this part of the route just because of the fact that the train has to go quite slow on this part of the route, and because we're going slower we don't pass features as fast. How about I go into a passenger view? So this is what passenger sees out of the right. You can see the hills going by and the mountains in the distance. If I look this way, we should see Island Airfield. Maybe we won't see Island Airfield. There it is over there. Or at least one of the islands. They're a lot further away than I imagined. Looking this way, it's just ocean. Right, we should be approaching a higher speed. What's that runway there? Like, I definitely do a lot of Kerbal Construct stuff, but I don't remember placing a runway there. It's surprising the amount of things I build with Kerbal Constructs that I completely forget about. Right, we are approaching a slightly higher speed limit, where I can go a bit faster for like 1 minute and then I have to slow back down again. Back up to 100 meters per second. I think we might be overdue the derail kraken happening. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Then when we get to roughly where this land goes near the track, I will slow down to back to 40 again. Back down to 40. And we are approaching Beach Airfield. Oh look there, you can see the Kerbals and how they're reacting to this torturous ride for them. There's Beach Airfield, which has a station. Station is on this peninsula over here. There we go. And now we stay at 40 meters per second for like 11 or 12 minutes. I should probably rebuild this bit of track so that I can either go faster along here or just have the slow speed limit be shorter. There we are, passing beach station. And the beach is there. Let's go back to passenger view again. So there's Beach Airfield from the passenger view, with the mountains west of Kerbal Space Center in the background. This bit is probably the slowest part of the monorail trip, where I have to go 40 for like 10 minutes straight. Probably ends up being closer to 12 minutes, with the physics rate being a bit lower than real time. I've also had the derail kraken happen quite often along here. Hopefully it doesn't happen along here, because if it happens along this portion of the track, it will definitely derail. If we look over there, you can see the other railway in the distance, and the mountains west of the Kerbal Space Center. Let's just have a look at MechJeb's surface info to see how fast I'm going. I'm actually speeding slightly, but honestly, speeding on this bit doesn't matter that much as long as you're not going too far over 40. Like, anywhere below 45 is safe. 50, things start getting a little bit sketchy. And it's one of the longest portions of track, or maybe I should rephrase that. It's the longest amount of time the train spends over water here. There is a longer section of track that's over water, but the train is going far faster when it's going over that bit, so it doesn't take nearly as long as this. Let's not drop anything off the desk. Just got to endure the views of the train moving so slowly on this bit, as we're on one of the slowest parts of the monorail. Not really many exciting things to see out the window, is there? If I look that way, there's just more terrain and water. If I look that way, you can just about see beach airfield. Guess we can maybe look at some Kerbal reactions. Here's the Kerbal reactions. You can see Bob and this other one are quite scared. Bill is slightly concerned and Valentina is smiling. That's a roof window. You won't need surface info anymore. Should be arriving at Kerbin City in about 15 minutes. As I said, there's not really much to say going along here because it's just a very long and slow bit of track along here. But we are finally approaching the next high speed limit, which should be just up this hill that's coming. So I would say out of all the monorail lines that I have, this is probably my least favourite one, as you're just going quite slow for quite a long time, when the rest of them you're going fast, or at least a bit faster than this. It's hard to believe that this was built a year ago, though. Like, I remember just building this. Doesn't seem like that long ago. Right, we can see the speed limit sign approaching, telling me that I can finally accelerate. we go. And now the speed limit is 200. That's what a magenta sign means. Magenta means 300. Maybe it was a purple sign, because purple... Yeah, I'm just looking back at the stream and it's a purple sign. Purple means 200. So the different sign colours mean, so red is 10 meter per second speed limit, orange is a 20 meter per second speed limit, yellow is a 40, green is a 60, light blue is 80, dark blue is 100, purple is 200, magenta is 300, and white is 400. The last three do not really apply to this train because it can only go up to around 180. We are approaching Crate Incinerator Junction. That's why the speed limit sign is pointed to the left like an arrow. Because we're not going left at this junction, we're going straight on. Here's the junction, Crate Incinerator Junction. There's the warning that I have to slow down soon. And we are passing a runway which I call Airfield. And Airfield Station is also coming up. Here we are about to pass Airfield Station. Here's Airfield Station. now the speed limit goes back down to 40. And now we're about 5 to 10 minutes away from Kerbin City. If I make it past Kerbin City, that's where the track speed really starts to go back up high again. Just about see some things at Kerbin City in the distance. Then the speed limit goes back up to 100 in a bit. Right, now we can speed up as the track is straight and we're heading towards Kerbin City. It was not until around Kerbin City when I learned really how to make track that's best for a monorail. So before Kerbin City, most of the track is quite slow. When after Kerbin City, I found out that if you have short, slow curves with long, straight segments in between, you can get quite high speed out of the trains. Kerbin City should be visible on the left. Speed limit goes back down to 40 just because the track is just badly built along here. I hope I don't fail, but there's two things that can go wrong. There's either me or the derail kraken. The derail kraken seems to happen a bit more often, but there's like a 70% chance that you make it through the derail kraken unscathed, but there's still a chance that it takes you off of the track. The derail kraken is where the wheels clip through the track and then the train bounces into the air when the wheels realise they've clipped through. Inside of tunnels it can be a lot more destructive. We are now rapidly approaching Kerbin City. You're scared right now. Are you as scared as these Kerbals here? Anyway, we're now approaching a curve where we have to slow down a bit. Here's Kerbin City on the left. There we go, we're now passing Kerbin City. Have to go 20 meters per second. There we go. Round the curve we go. Now I'll just let the train slow itself down as it goes round the curve, as the next speed limit is even lower at 10. There we go. Going down to 10, where I will go round the next curve, which is a 10 meter per second limit curve. Here we go. We have made it round the curve, and now we can speed up to 100. We are now heading towards the ZPA base from the Kerbin City. And then when we reach the top of this hill in the distance, we can go back up to 200 again. At the top of this hill we're about to climb, we can then go back up to full speed, where in about 10 to 15 minutes we will pass the ZPA base. Here we go, we're about to reach the top of the hill. Can now go back up to full speed. It shouldn't derail going along here, unless the derail kraken happens. There we go. We're approaching top speed now. And we have a 200 meter per second speed limit. The ZPA base will come up in about 10 minutes from now, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And that is where I do the yearly ZPA Kerbal event, which is a yearly live stream I do where I torture Kerbals, and whoever is last in each torture device wins that round. The Kerbal who wins the round gets a point, and there's quite a good number of rounds in the ZPA, so the Kerbal with the most number of points at the end wins. We are at full speed now. Chat is working. My voice. So we should be rapidly approaching the ZPA base now. Here comes the ZPA base. I will now start to slow down, ready for the next curve coming up. There we go, we're now slowing down, ready for the next low speed limit. This low speed limit shouldn't last as long as the rest of the lower speed limits. There we go. Once we pass this bridge, we are in the ZPA base. There we go, around this curve where I have to do 40. And we are in the ZPA base where the yearly ZPA Kerbal events will take place. As in, personally, I want to try and get to the end of the line without derailing, but if I do get to the end of the line without derailing, I will derail at the end intentionally. But there are plenty of chances of derailing before that. We are going back up to full speed again. passing ZPA station here. And we have now left the ZPA base. We cross over one last time with the other railway added by the new railway mod. There we go, we're just passing the other railway. And ahead you can see a mess of a tunnel that I made, which I built, and it took like 2 hours to build, and I got so bored at the end that I couldn't be bothered to finish placing the terrain integrators to make terrain. Hello? You can see I've completed the right hand side of this hill, but I never completed the left hand side of the hill. Here's the entrance to the tunnel. At this point we are probably about halfway along the monorail, the entire monorail. The Kraken wants me to derail. Just the Kraken likes to wait for a specific time before the Kraken tries to derail me. As you can see, this is a rather straight line which just goes through lots of green areas. So as of currently, the track is taking us north, where the train will then turn left and go across the river straight. Here we are about to go over this bay here, where we go over the ocean a little bit. We're about to go through another tunnel. This tunnel is called City 2 Tunnel. Very creative naming, because I never have the creativity to name things, so I just called it City 2 Tunnel. And this is City 2 Tunnel 2. Very creative naming, I know. Not. Then we go over this sort of beachy area here with this lake. Where we approach a very unfinished tunnel, which I never finished. This tunnel I never finished because I think when I built it I just couldn't be bothered to finish it. This tunnel is called Weather Island Tunnel, as this one is kind of near Weather Island Station. It's still closer to City 2 Station. As you can see, I never made the tube for the tunnel. If I look out the window here, you can see Weather Island over there as that floating island in the sky. I will soon have to slow down for the next curve coming up. There we go, let's start slowing down now. For the next curve coming up. and we are approaching a junction. This junction is currently unused because the track that joins up with us is unfinished. You can see some mountains in the distance as well. Let's slow down some more. Ready for this curve coming up. There we go. We are at the speed ready to go around this curve. Which has a 40 meter per second speed limit. This green sign we are approaching tells me that I can now accelerate to 60 meters per second. And then this blue sign coming up tells me I can go up to 100. Let me just check the junction coming up, make sure I've got it set in the correct way, which it is. I'm not sure the Kerbals would be screaming. They're screaming a little bit. They're slightly terrified. So they won't be as scared now I'm slowing down, as we are approaching the Weather Island station. Here is Weather Island Station. To get to Volcano Tunnel, just after Volcano Tunnel at the end of the line, that would take about 50 minutes to an hour to get to Biker Banor, then maybe another hour to go down the rest of the line. So we've got a good 2 hours ahead of us still if we don't derail. Right, we are about to go around another curve soon, where we will start heading west towards the strait between the Kerbal continent and the desert continent. It must have been a bug, the dislikes, because when I looked at the YouTube studio a minute ago, it was at 0. Going a little bit fast approaching this curve, but we should be able to slow down in time. There we go. We're at just the right speed for this curve. And now we can go back up to full speed. The next station we'll pass is Tiny Sands Station, which the name of that station is based on an airfield I have there called Tiny Sands, which is named after, well, it's not named after anything, but the name is a play on the fact that there's a tiny desert biome over in this direction. The desert biome is like really small. It's a very small desert biome. over here you can see an abandoned monorail track. It's where I built the track in a way that would have taken a really long time to go along, so I decided to abandon it and build a new one where I can go faster. We're about to pass over the abandoned monorail line. There's Bill Kerman looking a bit concerned. As in, hopefully I won't derail now, but it could happen at any moment. Depends when the Kraken wants to throw me off the track. There's Tiny Sands airfield in the distance. Here we are about to pass Tiny Sands Station. And just after Tiny Sands Station, which we just passed, is the bridge over the strait between the Kerbal continent and the desert continent. We're approaching where that bridge starts in a minute. There we go. Just after this, where I placed a map decal to cut through the terrain, is where the bridge starts. We are now on the bridge between the Kerbal continent and the desert continent. And we had the derail kraken, but we survived. And we're still on the track. Better luck next time, Kraken. I think that's the first time I've survived the derail kraken on a curve. So as you may have noticed, the kraken did try derailing the train a minute ago, but the kraken failed that time. We have made it to the desert continent. Here we are going through this crudely built tunnel. And here we are approaching Bilfert Cosmodrome, which has a tunnel going under it, and a station. There we go, we've passed Bilfert Cosmodrome. The next station we will pass is Biker Banor, which will be in about 45 minutes to 50 minutes from now, if we don't derail before that. just going over a lake now, as you can see. Just past this lake I have to slow down to 80 meters per second for a curve. Then we go through a couple of tunnels, and then we slow down to 40 meters per second for a sharper curve. And then after that we speed back up to full speed, where it will be full speed for the rest of the way to Baikarbanor. There we go, we're at 80 meters per second. Over there you may notice there's a lot of debris. The debris is from previous derailments I have had. I think 2 previous derailments I've had along this line have caused these areas of debris we are approaching. One derailment was caused by a map decal changing slightly, and the other derailment was caused by me crashing. Actually, it wasn't a derailment now I'm thinking about it, it was just the other hang on, let me think about this. One derailment was caused by the map decal failing on the tunnel. The other derailment was caused by the derail kraken inside the tunnel. But there was also another incident at this tunnel where a train crashed into some debris from a previous derailment. So this tunnel doesn't have the best reputation, having at least 3 crashes here. 2 of them being derailments, 1 of them being a crash into debris. This tunnel is called Jean's Curse, which I just placed a stock Kerbal waypoint on the tunnel and just stuck with the random name. So there's some debris from a previous derailment down there. That was the derailment from the derail kraken. And the debris over there around the tunnel portal is from when the map decal failed. And this tunnel is Jean's Curse Tunnel, which really is a curse with the number of crashes that have happened here. go. Coming out the other side of the tunnel now. And the next tunnel is... I forgot the name of that tunnel now. Jean's Curse. Then... I forgot what this one's called. And the next one is called something like Engineers something or another. This is what happens when I let the Kerbal random name generator for the waypoints name the tunnels. I never remember the names of the tunnels. But we're now going through this tunnel. And soon we'll have to slow down to 40 meters per second for a curve. Here comes the next sharp curve where I have to slow down. And this curve is the last curve before Biker Banor that I have to slow down for. And we're about to go around this curve now. There we go, we've just made it round the curve. Now we can go back up to full speed. Back up to 180. Here comes the next tunnel. This one I also forget the name of. through the tunnel we go. To our left we have some mountains. To our right we have oceans. Let's go into passenger view for that. Hang on a second. If I can actually control this. There's the mountains that we're passing. Let's check the speed we're going. Speed is alright. There we are, passing the mountain. Along this route towards Biker Banor, there's a lot of mountains to see. As if we look at the map in the bottom left corner, we sort of thread the needle between all these mountain ranges to get to Biker Banor, which is here. That mountain there looks a bit like a volcano. Let's see what we can see out the right hand side. It's pretty much the same, to be honest. You can see some mountains over there in the distance. Back in the cab view. You can see those mountains over there better. Especially as we approach them. Going up a hill now. The track very close to the terrain. If we go back to passenger view, we'll be able to see some mountains. At least in a minute we'll be able to see some mountains. About out to our left. Yeah, we can see some mountains to the left side of the train. Let's look back out the right side. Yep, the mountains are now approaching. So let's get into the angle where I like to view mountains from. Also get the speed with MechJeb's surface info to make sure I'm not slowing down too much. Plenty of mountains to see along this route though. There should be a tunnel coming up soon, from what I remember. There's the mountains. Should be approaching that tunnel I was on about soon. Here's the tunnel. And we've left the tunnel. You can see we're going in a bit more of a grassy area here, when before we were in a more deserty area. We're sort of transitioning back to the grasslands again. Look out the other side, as there's some more mountains out the other side to see. For some reason this side seems grassier than the other side, even though this is the side of the train facing the big desert. Let's go back to a cab view. This line is very long, straight, and not really much but views of mountains occasionally, which is why I'm not really saying much. More mountains over there. There's a few mountains over there. some views of some mountains. There should be plenty of mountains to see along this route. We'll go back to the cab view in a minute, once the view of the mountains are gone. So we should soonish be approaching a lake. Can't remember how soon we'd be approaching a lake, but I know it's at some point along this line. I have a feeling it's just before the next mountain range that we're approaching, which we actually go through I'm also not talking that much right now because there's not really much to talk about going past. So we should be approaching a lake in the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll go over that lake and then towards some mountains where we will go through 2 tunnels, and then we'll go over some more lakes. To our left we can see some mountains. To our right we see nothing but flat plains. So let's go into passenger view to look at these mountains. You can actually tell the train is going downhill by the angle of the cabin. Let's turn on surface info. I have played Kerbal 2 before, but after learning that it failed, I decided to unlist all of the videos. Here are the lakes. I unlisted all of the videos that had Kerbal 2 on because I thought most viewers would rather see the original game. Let's go into cab view for the big lake, which is ahead somewhere. The big lake should be just over this hill. And you can actually see as well some debris that has just appeared in the distance. Are you on about parts like the vacuum engine with 4 nozzles and a couple of other things like some of the trusses and one of the, like a rover cockpit and some like the big wheels and big landing gear? Because those parts I just mentioned are not in Kerbal 1. Here's the big lake that I was on about. It's quite easy to get more parts for the original game if you're not on console edition, because you can download some part mods if you don't consider it cheating, because I know some people do consider part mods cheating. So basically you just download the part mod and put the mod into the game data folder. You might need to install some dependencies as well. And now that we've passed that lake, we are now going up towards a tunnel. Now this tunnel I remember the name of. I got the Kerbal Waypoint namer to name this tunnel, and the waypoint name generator named it Valentina's Wonder. It's a relatively long tunnel, probably maybe 7 to 10 kilometers long. Then we come out onto a plateau. And over here should be another tunnel. You can also see some debris in the distance that has appeared on the horizon right there, which is debris from a previous derailment I have had. I'm sure that definitely does not comfort the Kerbals any, seeing debris from previous trains that have derailed. Speaking of Kerbals, let's see how terrified they are. They're looking pretty terrified, aren't they? Especially those two. Here we are approaching the next tunnel, which I think is called something like Jebediah's Curiosity, also named by the waypoint name generator. Here's Jebediah's Curiosity tunnel. And we should be passing some more lakes in a minute, as well as some mountains either side of us. To our left we have some mountains, lots of mountains. To our right we have some smaller mountains, and in front of us should be some lakes coming up, some more lakes. There we go, can just about see the edges of the lake now that we're about to go over. Here we are going over the lake. You may notice there's a lot of debris in the lake. That debris is from a derailment I had. I believe it was from me testing a train going very fast, which derailed. When I say very fast, I mean going like 500 meters per second. Yeah, you can see one of the carriages down there. If I go on external view, there's a carriage down there from the derailed train. As a passenger, you probably wouldn't know where to look because over there's some lakes, over there's some mountains, and I think there might be more mountains out this way. There's more lake this way, less mountains. Over there you can see the mountains. Quite a big mountain range over there. You should be within, coming to within 100 kilometers of Biker Banur now. I wonder how high those mountains are. They're probably some of the taller mountains on Kerbin, probably over 5 or 6k. And we should be soon coming into Biker Banur in about 10 minutes from now. Maybe about 10 minutes, I think. That's a very big mountain range over there. getting quite close to Biker Banur now. We should be within 50 kilometers now of Biker Banur. Let's return to the cab. You can see the mountains sort of to the right there in front. Those are the mountains of Biker Banur. I realise I'm more like 70 kilometers from Biker Banur, not 50. Which this train can do 1 kilometre every 5 or 6 seconds. Let's say 1 kilometre every 6 seconds. Oh, that lag spike there was Biker Banur tunnel loading in, which is the second longest tunnel on the entire monorail. Can see some more debris in the distance from another derailment I've had. Can definitely see the mountains north of Biker Banur now. We should start to see the Biker Banur tunnel soon in the distance, which is the second longest tunnel on the monorail at around 24 kilometers long. That one takes even longer to go through than the other long tunnel because you have to slow down around halfway through for an upcoming speed limit. Right, I can just about see Biker Banur tunnel coming up. There's Biker Banor Tunnel coming up, the second longest tunnel on the monorail at 24 kilometers long. It will take about 5 to 6 minutes to go through. I've had several derailments in this tunnel in the past, which is what made me think of this tunnel as Derail Tunnel in the past. We're now slowing down for the upcoming speed limit at the end of Biker Banor Tunnel. Can just about see the light at the end of the tunnel now. To our right, at the end of the tunnel, we will see Biker Banor. So I will quickly switch to passenger view for that. There's Biker Banor. KSC 2. And now onwards to the last portion of the trip. approaching Biker Tunnel 2, which is the other tunnel at Biker. This tunnel is the first tunnel experimenting with a different static, so that I don't have to take as long building the tunnel. However, using these statics can be a bit more of a pain to build the tunnel because it can be a bit harder to align it to a track than the other tunnel piece. At the end of this tunnel we have to slow back down again for another curve. There's the light at the end of the tunnel, so you have to slow down. There we go, leaving Biker Tunnel 2, about to go round another curve. Back up to full speed again until we reach the next tunnel where we have to slow back down again. You may see some debris over here. This debris is from a previous derailment I had. approaching the next tunnel, which we have to slow back down for. This tunnel, I won't remember the name till I see the tunnel, so I'll have to have a look at it. I think this tunnel is called Eve Tunnel, named after the planet on Kerbal. Named after most people's least favourite planet. Yes, this is Eve Tunnel. And you may notice the sort of trim around the tunnel portal is purple. You can see I derailed in the tunnel, causing that debris up there to form. But because I reloaded it multiple times, it placed the debris up on the surface. Round the next curve we go. And back up to full speed we go. Going back up to full speed. We are now on the last straight line. It will still take about 30 to 40 minutes to go all the way along though. Depending on whether I derail or not, of course. Oh, that was the derail Kraken. Something exploded. Is that the end of the live stream? We have derailed. We have derailed. I guess we better evacuate the Kerbals, and after that, the stream will be ending, as we have indeed derailed. So, quite a minor derailment for the speed that the train was going. Can I climb to the top? Hoping that the curb would be able to climb out onto the track, but to like evacuate the train, but it doesn't seem like that's possible. As in, the intent would be well, the Kerbals can't really get out, can they? They can jump out, I guess. Let's have a look at the track up close as well. So here's a size comparison between the train and the Kerbal, and the derailed carriage at the back. This counts as a derailment, so I will be ending the stream soon. But I feel like that it isn't really a very spectacular derailment, is it? Who wants it to be derailed further before the stream ends? Personally, I want it to derail more. So just before it ends, I'll derail it fully by going in the reverse direction. Reverse direction. There we go. So by going in the reverse direction, that will... Maybe I'll retract those to help it come off. Let's retract a few more of the guide wheels. Come on. Come on, derail further. As this is the end of the stream, we need a spectacular ending. It isn't coming off. Let's uncouple one of the carriages. That's definitely gonna help. There we go. There goes one carriage. There we go. That's a more spectacular derailment to end the stream. Anyway, if you didn't enjoy the stream, remember to dislike and unsubscribe, and maybe you won't watch the next one.